Well, hello. How are you guys doing? Mike Marlinski here with the Metal Webzine. Welcome to episode 26 of All the Metal Podcast. Today, we are talking death metal with Greg D. Pasquale from the band Fatal Curse. Not a death metal band, a classic heavy metal band, but Greg certainly knows a thing or two about death metal, having been in Seplophile for a number of years and being one of Seplophile's founding members. So, let me just do my little intro here, and we're going to give Greg a call. Death metal is an extreme subgenre of heavy metal music. It typically employs heavily distorted and low-tuned guitars, played with techniques such as palm muting and tremolo picking, deep growling vocals, aggressive, powerful drumming featuring double kick and blast beat techniques, minor keys and atonality, abrupt tempo, key, and time signature changes, and chromatic chord progressions. The lyrical themes of death metal may include slasher film-style violence, political conflict, religion, nature, philosophy, and science fiction. Alright, let's give Greg a call. Thanks for checking this out. Oh, I had a feeling it was going to be something like that. I'm very happy to hear that. What's going on? Episode 26, Death Metal Week. I like it. Are you excited?
Very.
Very, very. Do you have anything before we dive in?
No, I'm on the board. Let's go.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I'm going to say a band, and then tell me the first song you think of when you hear the band name and why. Ready?
My phone cut out. There was like you said you're gonna name a band and name a song.
I'm gonna name a band, and then you tell me the first song that you think of when you hear the band name and why.
All right, go for it.
Possessed.
Burning in Hell. Because it's just my favorite Possessed song. And the breakdown in the middle is still super tough, and it still makes the hair stand up on my arms.
Death.
Death. First Death song that pops to my head. I'll say Overactive Imagination, because it's kind of one of their. They were kind of starting to move away from like the super brutal stuff, but that's like a really angry record, and it's a pretty intense song. There's some really angry vocals, some heavy riffs, and great solos by.
Awesome. Necrophagia.
Honestly, I was never. I think Seasons of Dying is their record. I think this is called, not Seasons of Dying. That's a band. I don't even know. Honestly, when I think of them, I think of Killjoy and Phil Anselmo. I don't really know too many of their songs, and I was never really crazy about them. I have respect for them because they were, originators in the scene, but they were just a band I was never really into.
Gotcha. It's questionable if they're death metal or not. Well, not really, but more so recently. Obituary.
No, they're definitely a death metal band. Absolutely. When I think of them, I think of the song "World Demise," title track off that record. It's just another super tough, heavy song.
Right. Autopsy.
Twisted Mass of Burnt Decay. Just because there's a part in that song, I forget where it is, it's near the end, where it's kind of a slower part, then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like, it could, like, break your neck. It just becomes a super fast song, like, just out of nowhere. It's like whiplashing how fast it happens. There's, like, no sign that it's coming, and all of a sudden, it just happens. So,
right.
And that rules.
Yeah, that's memorable. Last but not least, Morbid Angel.
problem is with just narrowing it down to one is that so many songs with these bands, except for
Oh, I know.
Aphasia, so many of these songs, pop into my head, and so I'm trying to kind of
go with your gut. Yeah.
Which one is screaming for my attention the loudest?
Right.
Morbid Angel. The song Suffocation, and that's because I love the chorus riff in that song. It's awesome.
Right on. Of the subgenres derived from death metal, which do you identify with most, if any? Choices are melodic death metal, tech death, death doom, death grind, gore grind, porno grind, deathcore, and death and roll.
That's tough to say. Yeah, it's probably neck and neck between death grind and death and roll. That's probably where I'm. It's probably neck and neck. It's tough for me to commit to one.
Right.
But I would say those are the two I'm closest to for sure.
Right. Which Venom album influenced death metal more? Kind of an obvious one, but I wanted to talk about Venom some more. Was it Black Metal or Welcome to Hell? And then, as a follow-up, name some of your favorite death metal bands known for breakneck speed that, at the same time, you wouldn't consider a thrash band.
I would say you're probably going to go with the first record, Welcome to Hell. I think maybe sound-wise, maybe the black metal record was, again, and I think I mentioned this last week, probably the song Black Metal might be a little closer stylistically to where the genre was going to kind of head.
Right.
But I would think that, you got to go with the ground floor, you got to go with Welcome to Hell. As far as breakneck speed death metal bands?
Yeah, breakneck speed death metal bands.
Well, a lot of them are very fast. Morbid Angel, obviously there was a lot of fast stuff on Altars of Madness. I wouldn't consider them a thrash band. A lot of my favorite death metal bands are kind of faster ones.
Yep.
Cannibal Corpse, when they want to be, they could really fucking crank up the BPMs and just blisteringly, blindingly fast.
Is there a certain point where the difference, depending on the guitar riffs, the difference is mainly the pitch of the vocals?
I think that it's not. Vocal pitch has something to do with it, but it's also the way the riffs are played.
Right.
Where you kind of start to teeter into thrash style riffing is where there's a lot of triple picks and gallops and thrash style picking. That's that's maybe where it would maybe teeter into the thrash stuff a little bit. Like Ripping Corpse, for instance, if someone wanted to call them a thrash band, I couldn't fault them for that because the vocals aren't particularly, guttural or brutal or whatever. But I would still call them a death metal band. I think where you're gonna find the line between what could tip as far as being thrash or death metal is you're gonna look at stuff like old Demolition Hammer, those first couple records, and probably the first Malevolent Creation album.
Right.
Those are probably the best examples of records that can really fall on either side of the fence there.
Like Ten Commandments.
I think vocals does have a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
But, it's just to put all that pressure just on the vocals probably isn't right, because obviously the music can do things. Because even if the vocals aren't super guttural, the music can do something that would make it more death metal. So, you can kind of...
Sure.
Like Slaughter of the Soul, by At the Gates, I wouldn't call that a thrash album. It's probably...
No, definitely not.
Closer to, the vibe of, it's certainly not as short, but it's closer to the vibe of, like Rain and Blood, where everything is kind of going for the throat, and it's got that one thrash beat basically throughout the record.
Throughout the whole album, yeah.
Yeah, throughout the whole album, to the point where some of the songs are kind of tough to distinguish, between each other. But, but I would still consider that like a melodic death metal record.
Sure.
I wouldn't consider that a thrash album.
Definitely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Lindbergh has a pretty original sounding voice. He's pretty easy to distinguish, and it's not very. He doesn't do like that thrash yell, and he doesn't have like a deep guttural either. Like he falls in between, and he's his own animal.
Right.
But yeah, so like it comes down to the music there for sure, more than the vocals.
Yeah.
So what does Seven Churches by Possessed mean to you?
It's the ground floor. I mean, for all intents and purposes, without getting into like the kind of proto death metal, the Hellhammer, Celtic Frost, Venom, type stuff. Possessed is kind of the ground floor. But honestly, when I think of Possessed, the first thing I think of is Matt Backless. I wouldn't say the first thing I think of, but it's one of the first things I think of is Matt Backless. He's one of my best buds, and I met him because I was wearing a Possessed Seven Churches t-shirt, or long sleeve shirt. I was wearing a Possessed Seven Churches long sleeve at Bennigan's on Maple Road in like the summer of 2003 in like the middle of Williamsville, and all of a sudden this dude walked up to me and was like, "Sick shirt, dude." And I was like, well, clearly I gotta be friends with this dude.
Because he knew what it was.
So when I think of Possessed, I think of ground floor death metal, and then I think of Backless. So yeah, I think of a couple things. Yeah,
definitely. Okay, Gregadeth story incoming. In the year 2006, I watched you skip across Main Street to Broadway Joe's, jumping up and down, yelling, "The new Dside album is incredible!" Talk about which album came out that year and what was so great about it.
I really do that.
Yeah, you really fucking did that. I was standing there. I want to know what the big fucking deal was, Greg. Everybody wants to know. Everybody who was standing on the patio wants to know.
I don't remember that at all. 2006, you said?
It would have been, it had to have been 2006 because of what was going on in my life at the time, and a conversation we had about a job I had started that year. So it had to have been 2006. So whatever Dside record came out on like a Tuesday or a Friday, like in the summer maybe.
Well, back then it would have been Tuesdays because that's when records came out on Tuesdays back then.
Okay.
So that would have been The Stench of Redemption, because that's really the only Dside record that's come out since I've been into them that would get me that excited. Not to slight their other records like The Shitty or anything like that, but Stench of Redemption was like really like a renewed sense of urgency and intensity from that band. Like that band was just on fire on that record, and the lead guitar playing that Ralph Santola did was fucking sick. I mean, everything about it was just like, yeah. I don't remember doing what you said I did, but I do remember being that happy about that record and really liking it.
Oh, you were ecstatic. That's why I thought it, because I don't know, like, I don't think I've ever said this to you, but when I think of you, I think of that night. And I think of how fucking happy you were about that death metal album. And I never knew what the fuck album it was.
When I had gotten into death metal, Dside was kind of in like a down time in the band. Like they had put out, a couple records that were, according to, I mean, you never know if this is true or not, or just an excuse to put out bad records or whatever. But supposedly they wrote and put out a couple records just to get out of their contract with Roadrunner that, they disowned very quickly. And those records, definitely not their best. And then the record after that, when they first got the Earache, was Scars of the Crucifix. That was okay. But, once the Hoffman brothers got out of the band and, they got in Jack Owen and Ralph Santola, and then Steve Asheim kind of took over, a vast majority of the writing, it was really like a rebirth for them, and they sounded reinvigorated. And Benton's vocals, they're ridiculously brutal and heavy on that record. So,
yeah.
That aside from like the early stuff like Legion or Once Upon a Cross, Stench of Redemption is probably my I like Stench of Redemption better than the debut, which I know is probably, heretical to anyone listening. This is probably going to gasp.
Sure.
But, I think the debut is cool, but I just prefer Stench of Redemption better.
Because the reawakening, the rejuvenation of the band hit you harder than the debut of the band, probably. And
also the debut of the band, I didn't know who they were when they came out.
Sure, yeah. Well, yeah, you would have had to work the discography backwards, we did.
Yeah,
so
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the first time, I mean, I had liked them beforehand, but the first time I ever heard the song Bible Basher, I was just enthralled by the vocals. And I don't even know what the lineup was at that time. I just remember being in high school and hearing the song Bible Basher.
Yeah, that would have still been the original lineup. And Benton, he's, obviously you're not really going to get a whole lot of, lyrical, ingenuity or, or really anything super clever or creative. He kind of does his vocals, and lyrics for that band are what they are, and they're going to be done over and over and over again, and that's fine. That's his deal. That's the trip. Once you burn, or brand yourself in the upside down cross, you kind of got to lay in that bed. And so the lyrics are kind of, they're always what they are, but the tone of his voice. I mean, his voice has gotten heavier with age. If you listen to the debut, even between the debut and record 3, Once Upon a Cross, like his voice had, his death metal balls had dropped. His voice got heavier and heavier and heavier over the years.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Sure.
Even if the lyrics are, not really, what they are. Again, I can't really say other than they are what they are. Even if the lyrics aren't impressive to someone, the sound of his voice that delivers them.
The layering too.
Always.
The layering too. The vocal layering on Dside albums is really impressive.
Yes, that's one of his trademarks. The low vocals and the high.
The low with the high.
Yeah,
yep.
That's kind of one of his trademarks, and he doesn't even sound like a human being. He kind of sounds like, I don't know, like a.
It's demonic as fuck. Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so Dside might also tie in with this next one a little bit, but talk about your favorites from the original Florida death metal scene.
Well, you have Death, you have Obituary, you have Morbid Angel, Dside. There's some other, the second tier bands, Solstice and Brutality. That stuff is pretty cool too. Just off the top of my head, that's really what comes to mind. Cynic, I know by the time they got to making records, they weren't a orthodox or conventional death metal band by any means, but their demos are absolutely raging. Some of the craziest riffing, and so it's when I think of Florida death metal, I think of the bands that everyone's going to tell you, because that's what it's known for.
Right.
They inherited, a really, really cool band that, a couple cool bands, from our city, over time. But when I think of Florida death metal, those are the bands that come to mind.
Right on. What does Morbid Angels' Altars of Madness mean to you?
It is a game changer. Game changer. That's, to me, the first record where... Because a lot of the death metal stuff that was before that, maybe not so much stuff like Obituary, but like, I would say the higher tempo death metal stuff before that, your Pestilence, Death, you could kind of connect that stuff to thrash metal a little bit in a way.
Yeah.
Obviously the vocals were heavy and the vocals were not thrashy, but some of the riffing and stuff like that, you could connect it to some of the more aggressive thrash. Altars of Madness was a record where maybe death metal kind of, it's like a point of departure. It's where death metal, to me, left its first form behind. It's like, it is. It's like it grew up and it moved out of its parents' house,
Right.
Altars of Madness was when death metal moved out of its parents' house.
Yeah, right.
It kind of
became its own beast.
Yes, it became its own beast. And that's how I think of Altars of Madness.
Mm. Okay, so I will now list some Swedish death metal bands. Name the first album that comes to mind and why. Dismember.
Like an ever-flowing stream. Awesome record. It's a perfect record. It's just got a jump that a lot of the other bands had in that scene just didn't have. They were a little more intense. They were a little faster, and yeah,
right.
It's a fucking awesome album.
Right. Entombed.
Wolverine Blues. And I think over time, I know that's a real divisive record for a lot of people. Some people, that's as far as they go, and for some people, it seems like that's one record too far.
Sure, right.
And obviously there's a scores of fans and people that like the stuff they pursued after that as well too. But most of the people I know, they either I shouldn't say all of them, but most of the people that I know, they either like them up to and including Wolverine Blues, or they just like Left Hand Path and Clandestine. Wolverine Blues, it's just got a vibe to it. It's kind of got like a fuck you. It's arguably like the invention of the death and roll kind of thing, and there's just kind of like a fuck you element to it. Just there's an attitude to it.
Yep.
Those guys weren't fucking idiots. They knew that people were probably going to shit all over for taking on this new vibe.
Yeah.
And they kind of didn't give a fuck. They did it, and it to me it shines through on the album. I mean, there's definitely some heavy songs on the record. I mean, the first song, I Master, is super fucking fast, and it's awesome. But it's just it's one of those records that kind of like Chaos AD by Sepultura, where it ended up becoming, I think, a bigger influence on hardcore than it did, metal or death metal.
Right.
I think Wolverine Blues had its prevailing influence. Obviously, I mean, there was a death and roll scene, after that, with a few bands trying to take their swing at that style, but I don't think that was a lasting legacy. Not with metal, at least. I think their legacy with that record is going to transfer more to the hardcore side of things. I think more bands in that style have taken more from that record than metal bands and death metal bands have.
Sure. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Grave.
Never See. Second record. And they come to mind because the vocalist, Jörgen Sandstrom, he was probably the best vocalist of that whole scene. They were so deep and powerful, and they were just super, super heavy sounding, and and I just, again, I think he was probably the best vocalist of that scene.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Unleashed.
I think of Where No Life Dwells. Honestly, I'm not really a big Unleashed fan, but if I was ever going to listen to Unleashed, it would probably be stuff off of that record.
Sure.
Just wasn't my thing.
Sure.
And it's just not my thing. I was never really into that band.
Yeah, I'm totally lost on that band, and that's why I threw them on the list, because I thought you'd have some insight, actually.
No, sorry to disappoint you.
All right. What does Napalm Death's Harmony Corruption mean to you? And as a follow-up, once grindcore was established, was Harmony Corruption closer to grindcore or death metal upon its conception?
What Harmony Corruption means to me is, it's kind of got that divisive effect that Wolverine Blues has.
Yep.
Is that there's some people where that's the end of the line for them.
Yeah.
Napalm died at that record. And there's some people where Napalm began for them on that record.
Right.
And I think that unless you were, because I think Harmony Corruption was the first record by Napalm that was actually distributed in the United States, or at least North America.
I think so, yeah.
Because up until that point, Scum and From Enslavement to Obliteration and Mentally Murdered, that was only really available via import from Earache Records. But I think in between the Mentally Murdered EP and Earache, and Harmony Corruption, Earache signed a distribution deal in North America with Combat Records.
Yep.
And a lot of it, that record is special to a lot of people because, again, it's probably the first time a lot of people heard that band.
Right.
And,
over here, yeah, and it's a transitional piece.
Yeah. Definitely transitional. I mean, they were kind of going there on the Mentally Murdered EP. It's definitely more death metal. It's still got that grindcore feeling and a grindcore edge to it, but it's definitely much more metal than the two records before it. 100% a lot more metal than the two records before it. But I think the biggest problem that people have with that record is the production of it. It has that kind of standard of the time Scott Burns production. I think, if you were a fan of the earlier stuff prior to it, which was definitely a lot more chaotic, a lot more reckless sounding, a lot harsher, a lot more caustic, I could see from that perspective of you're hearing Napalm, I could see how that could sound kind of neutered to you.
Right.
Kind of defanged,
yeah.
flawed, just...
Little overly produced, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a little overproduced. It's a lot more cleaned up,
Yep.
However, if you're looking at it, that's if you're looking at it from the hardcore or grindcore side of things or punk side of things. However, if you're looking at it from the metal side of things, it's obviously, as you know, it's a different perspective. It's a different outlook. It's a different take generally. There's a lot of death metal or metal folks who might not dig the whole punk, hardcore, grindcore vibe of their stuff prior to it. They might think it's too fucking noisy or shitty or produced poorly. And the fact that it was cleaned up and it was a lot more quote-unquote listenable on Harmony Corruption, if you're a fan of orthodox death metal and productions that were like that of the time, I could see how Harmony Corruption might be this fucking amazing record for you.
Yep.
I kind of fall somewhere in between the two.
Yep.
Harmony Corruption wasn't the first Napalm record I had or heard or owned, but I could kind of see both sides of that fence. I could see how you could be like, oh, this is just the band's dead here. It's so cleaned up. They were trying to do something new or whatever. But again, I could see it from the metal perspective, saying, well, it's a lot more metal. So it's a record I enjoyed. I think maybe the production had been a little bit different and maybe a little less orthodox. I think people would be into it more.
Right.
I don't let the production take away from the songs.
Yep.
But ultimately that's a record that they never repeated. I mean, that record is anomalous to them because as quick as they went into that sound, they kind of dumped back out of it. They kind of went back into a mix of where they were on Harmony Corruption to kind of where they were prior to that on Mentally Murdered. So they did go back to something more aggressive and more caustic after that, which was fine. I mean, I love, I dig Harmony Corruption. I dig the Mass Appeal Madness, EP after that, and I like Utopia Banished as well. So I'm a Napalm Death fan, so I'm into their journey. So
right.
I'm really
You're into the journey, right, right.
I'm into the journey, so I'm really into almost anything they do. I mean, they experimented with some stuff that I really didn't need them to experiment with in the 90s, but they're extremists. They're extreme music adventuralists. So
yep.
I mean, I support them on their quest. But I guess to get back to the question, Harmony is an important record because it really crossed the divide for them, and it kind of changed the way death metal was going to go forward because death metal didn't have a ton of blast beats before
right.
stuff like Harmony Corruption
sure.
and Altars of Madness. Before those records started coming out, death metal again, didn't really have a lot of blast beats.
They had the thrash beat.
After that, they had a lot of the thrash beat.
Yep.
But after those records like that were coming out, Effigy Is Forgotten by Suffocation as well, after those records come out, there's a lot more blasting in death.
They got very popular very fast, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a pivotal record, and pivotal records generally do have detractors. Those kind of touchstones, those focal points, they usually draw lines in the sand for people, Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say I saw Napalm Death at Club Meltdown in Hamburg in 2001. It was attached to a Days Inn, and Boss Tribal opened. I want to say that was my last Napalm Death experience. When did you see Napalm Death? When have you?
I'm trying to think. I've seen him twice. I opened for him in 2006 when I was in Sons of Azrael.
Oh, that's killer.
And then I saw them again at the Town Ballroom in 2013 when they were there with Immolation and Cannibal Corpse.
Yep.
And that was awesome as well, too. They were on that Slayer tour in 2018.
Yep.
And they played Darien Lake, but, just because of work or whatever, I couldn't get there because that show started crazy early. I couldn't get there in time to see Napalm. So I just, it would have been the third time, but I think I missed them by 15 or 20 minutes or something like that. But I've actually only seen them twice.
Where was the Napalm show that Sons of Azrael opened?
Club Infinity.
Oh, okay. Maybe that sounds really fucking familiar. Maybe I did see them another time and that was it. It's possible. Okay, so with how much time has passed, would you say you've grown to, more death metal bands utilizing one guitarist or two? And I mean this only statistically.
I'm definitely partial to the two-guitarist band. I'm trying to think of the death metal bands I listen to that only have one guitarist, and there's really not many.
Okay. That's what I was asking, right?
Yeah. There's really, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Fuck. Death metal bands with one guitarist. Let me just scroll my,
Yeah, I'm curious now. Who you do have.
See if I have. I'm actually, kind of at a loss right now, just off the top of my head. I mean, let's see. Well, I mean, depending on which era of the band that was kind of going around, Baphomet, they only had one guitarist for, a lot of the time they were a band. What else you got here? I mean, early Carcass, Symphonies of Sickness, they only had Bill Steer. So, but, I mean, that didn't last too long. Yeah, not a whole lot. Now, I'm kind of scrolling through my iPod here. Yeah. Just basically that. Oh, Decapitated. Holy shit.
Yep.
Decapitated, yeah.
Yep.
Lest I forget Decapitated.
Yep.
That's, the risk of just, fucking scrolling endlessly through shit. I'll cap it there. Dying Fetus. Oh, there's another one.
Yep.
Dying Fetus. I mean, I guess that's not really the question you asked, but I prefer to.
Well, no, now I'm curious, of who's in your playlist right now, if it's really that few, right?
Yeah, not really. Yeah, I don't really.
Yeah.
I think that's
So even on a subconscious level, you're preferring two guitars in death metal.
Yeah, but you know what? Honestly, Christian, there's only one guitarist, Christian too. But honestly, that's not. I don't think that's a.
It's not subconscious.
A matter. I don't think it's a matter of conscious or subconscious. I just think I like
two guitars.
I just don't think. I don't even think it's that. I just think it's something that's not very prevalent in the genre.
Sure.
Massacre had one guitarist for a little bit, but I think that it's become kind of anomalous.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. Right.
You know. So I mean, I think it's not something that would ever really play into why I like or not like a death metal band. You know, because you listen with your ears, and
yes.
If I hear a record, if it's great, then I'm going to like it. You know, it doesn't matter if it has one guitarist or two. If it sounds good to my ears, I'm going to get into it. It just so happens to be that seemingly a vast majority of death metal bands have two guitar players.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Okay. People who don't listen to death vocals love to point out how all death metal vocalists sound exactly the same. Talk about some death metal vocalists you find to be remarkably distinct.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, that's a battle that's going to be fought forever. Anyone who isn't into it is always going to think that stuff sounds exactly the same. But really, there's definitely a difference between the ones that are great and the ones that are just okay, and the ones that just kind of aren't really anything special. But when I think of ones that come to mind as being particularly unique, I would say the first one that's gonna come to mind is Martin Van Drunen of Pestilence and Asphyx. He kind of has a voice that is just so inhuman sounding. I think I read a quote somewhere like he could read the fucking phone book and it would sound so brutal.
Right.
You think of John Tardy on the old Obituary records. I mean, no one sounded like that. I mean, that was just grotesque. Trying to remember Chuck from Death. He had an identifiable voice. Peter from Vader. He has a really unique, distinguishable voice. Trying to remember his name, but he was the original singer of Sinister from the Netherlands. He had a really, really cool voice, and he used a lot of cool patterns too. Frank Mullen of Suffocation. David Vincent, the old Morbid Angels stuff. His voice actually kind of changed. His voice was probably more along the lines of what would be considered kind of maybe more of like a black metal style vocalist. By the time he got to the Covenant record, album 3, he started to become a much more deeper style vocalist. I think that's where he really he hit his mark, is really starting to kind of get his own identity and really stand out from the pack. Corpse Grinder, lest we forget Corpse Grinder. He's got a very unique voice. I know I'm forgetting someone here. Cam Lee.
Yep.
Of Massacre and Death.
And you're a little biased there, naturally.
Yeah, he's an originator, and you definitely hear it in his voice, because he was a big influence on Barney from Napalm Death in his early days, and also a big influence on a guy like Dave Ingram from Benediction too. I mean, those guys basically just copied a lot of what Cam was doing, and as a result, they kind of sounded good doing it. TJ Frost from Baphomet. I know not a lot of people in Buffalo, at least people our age, maybe don't remember him from that. They probably remember him from STEM, but his vocals on those Baphomet records were tremendous. I mean, they were kind of more along the lines of like the Cam Lee, Barney thing, but they were a little bit different, and they were just super crushing. I think his vocals, as great as Chris Barnes was back in the day in Cannibal Corpse,
yep.
I think back then, TJ's vocals were the stronger of the two.
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah. Definitely.
But yeah, I mean, those are just the ones that come to mind immediately.
Sure. Do you tend to care about death metal lyrics? If so, what style appeals to you the most? Slasher films, personal stuff, political stuff, etc.?
Lyrics, I think that I do enjoy lyrics. Some people don't give a shit, and that's fine. Ultimately, for death metal vocals, it's one thing if the lyrics are cool, but the vocals are shitty. It's almost like that's an eliminator right there.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if the lyrics are awesome. If they just don't sound good, if they don't sound powerful or dark enough or intense enough, then it doesn't really fucking matter, I guess. But yeah, I do like to see effort put in lyrics because since there's no effort, and I don't even want to say effort because it's not really supposed to be there, but I like to see effort put into lyrics because there's really no effort being made to be melodious, like,
yeah. Yeah, of course. You're not writing vocal melodies, so what are you doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so if you're not writing vocal melodies, in my opinion, it's the job of the vocalist to come up with really, really cool sounding vocal patterns, and and maybe keep the lyrics interesting as well too. Granted, not a lot of them are to be discernible just because that's the nature of the vocal style, but I do still read liner notes and shit. I still like to read lyrics and stuff, and when I for death metal lyrics, I mean, I think they can't really be happy. They got to be kind of dark. I'm not particularly crazy about everything has its place. I like a little bit of gore lyrics. I like a little bit of violent lyrics. I like but mostly I just dark topics. I would say that's where I would say I want to hear death metal stuff. Maybe more on like the psychological side of things. Maybe not so much overt graphic violence or gore. Just like if you can, if you say it and it's out there and it's obvious, you kind of, I don't know, it's less intimidating to me. Whereas if it's if there's hints and allegations and kind of an element of the unknown, to me it's darker. To me it's scarier.
Yeah.
It's more intimidating because what you don't know is always more intimidating than what you do.
That's right.
So if there's an element of, maybe putting the onus on the listener to imagine it instead of giving them the picture, kind of giving them the dots to connect on themselves and come up with something that's probably a lot more horrifying in your own head.
Right, it's better to leave it vague and ominous sometimes.
I mean, yeah, there's a time and place to be upfront and to be bold and just graphic about it. It makes sense, but to me, if it's like that the entire time, it nullifies it. It dulls the effect. It's less constant violence. Ultimately, becomes less violent to me.
Sure. Because you're so accustomed to hearing it, there's no impact. Yes,
exactly. So if you could kind of keep that element of maybe mystery and darkness, and then if you keep it in the shadows and then occasionally shine a light on it, to me that's way more intense.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a cool visual too, the way you just described that.
Yeah. Thanks.
Choose one, and we're choosing songs. Death metal by Possessed or black metal by Venom?
Possessed.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
What is it about, what's your favorite guitar moment in that song?
Just the main riff. It's kind of like, it's just raw, it's got plenty of jump and energy, it's just very, very intense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Talk about some newer death metal bands who aren't getting enough mention, and including locals if you want, just across the board.
Well, I think that the death metal scene of the last 5 or 10 years has really, really produced the best newer batch of death metal bands that I've heard since I've been into the style of music. You know, when I got into death metal, it was in a down period for the genre. It was still, you know, there wasn't a lot of new bands coming out, or at least not that I was aware, because we're talking we're talking pre-social media, you know, the world is a lot smaller, you know, with that technology. So, you know, when I got into the genre, it was basically a lot of old bands that were either still trucking along or bands that had been long since defunct. And that's kind of how I felt like it was for a really, really long time. And because I got into the genre so far after it had, you know, kind of already peaked and crested or whatever, you know, that I just had a constant stream to backtrack on. And it was all great shit. And, you know, luckily, it's, you know, I'll be backtracking forever because I got into the game so late comparatively. You know, I was like 20 or 21, and that was, you know, I was like 19 actually, I think. So it was like 2001. You know, the scene, the modern day scene, if you're going to say, you know, it started with, you know, for all intents and purposes, the scene was 16 years old at that point, I guess. You know, just to kind of throw a number out there. So I was way behind it. 16 years worth of records to catch up on. And there was just never really a ton of new bands, just because it wasn't the right time. And you can't manufacture that. It just happens.
Right.
You know, you can't make timing happen. It just, sometimes there's just the right group of people at the right time, and it just happens. And I feel like around 2008, 2009, 2010, around there, you could feel that starting to come back a little bit as far as like newer bands kind of coming up and just, you know, and ultimately, again, in the last probably 5-10 years, the best bands since I've been in the genre have popped up, and, you know, a lot of them are getting, you know, they're just rewards. They're getting the press. They're getting the attention. Bands like Blood Incantation and Necrot, you know, Mortuous and Tomb Mold and, you know, Carnagia, Paul Gorfine from Embalmers, you know, other band. They put out what might be the death metal record of the year this year. So there's, you know, a ton of just killer bands.
Yep.
You know, and they're all, none of them are reinventing the wheel.
Sure.
You know, but it's kind of like we always say, it's a fresh coat of paint. You know, they put a fresh coat of paint on.
Right.
And it just, you know, it just sounds reinvigorated, you know?
Right.
Some of the bands that are doing that style don't exist anymore, that were doing it back in the day, or that were doing it best, or whatever. And even if they are, maybe they lost a little bit of that edge. Maybe they lost a little bit of that intensity for whatever reason. These bands kind of picked it up, sharpened the sword a little bit, and just started burying it back in people, you know? So it's
right.
Good. I think the ones that I had mentioned are probably some of the better ones.
Sure.
You know, but
sure.
there's been so many that have popped up. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. It's a popular genre, very popular.
08 or 09, and you know, their one record they put out with, you know, was fucking brutally heavy, and you know, it's been a really, really great time for the genre.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot coming out. It's increasing in popularity. Everywhere. Like, I see, like, or maybe I'm just now noticing it because of, you know, how easy it is for bands to promote themselves and represent themselves online, and there's so much accessible music, but, like, you really do see that. You see new death metal popping up everywhere all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, last but not least, talk about your death metal journey, including your time with Seplophile. Your personal Greg's death metal journey.
All right, well, you know, like a lot of people our age or whatever, and specifically in our city, the first time I'd ever been exposed to death metal was in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective.
Sure.
Obviously Cannibal Corpse was in it, and at that time I didn't even know they were a Buffalo band. And at that time they were still living in Buffalo, so they were a legit Buffalo band at that time. They hadn't moved to Tampa yet. I didn't know that they were a Buffalo band until probably a few years after that. Maybe not until they'd already been gone for a few years that I realized, or that I learned they were a Buffalo band. And and like a lot of things, the vocals were tough to get into because they're unconventional. You're not, until you hear vocals like that, you've never heard vocals like that.
Right. You have to acclimate.
You're used to melodic vocals with melody. That's what you're used to. And even at that time, the metal I was listening to, it wasn't really heavier than, I guess the heaviest band I was probably listening to at that point might have been Testament. And, Chuck Billy still did a lot of melodic vocals at that point. He had yet to go into, like, the demonic era, where he just basically did death metal vocals the entire record. But, he was starting to tinker with that resonance in his voice at that time. So on a song like Dog Face Gods on the Low album, that's kind of a death metal style vocal. And, over time, the music I was getting into was starting to get a little bit heavier. Obviously, I listened to Testament. And, Slayer was heavier too, but Tom Araya didn't do any death metal vocals. It was kind of more of like a shouted thing. Obviously I listened to Pantera at that time, and that wasn't really death metal vocals. That was more of a shouted or screamed thing. But just eventually, over time, just being a fan of Testament, I started to get used to, the vocals. And it started to, I started to like those songs on Testament records more and more. So I was like, well, clearly, there's something about this that I'm liking more and more. It's aging really, really well. And then I kind of got into Death, which we kind of discussed on that episode. And, it started to kind of creep in, because although those vocals are definitely heavy, Chuck did a really good job of kind of being able to be discernible, and you kind of understand a lot of what he was saying, even though he had, brutal vocals. And then, Obituary, and I'm just kind of noticing a pattern, and I'll never forget, I was watching MTV, and they had a Headbangers Ball special on, and Ricky Rackman was talking about how the format was such of the show that he could play Poison, and then the next song after Poison would be Napalm Death. And then they played a clip of the song The World Keeps Turning from that video. And the line that they showed was, "And now our virgin minds are raped." And Barney's voice in that part sounded so immense and massive. And that was really, I would say, the first super guttural vocal that I really, really got into. Because if you listen to those other vocalists that I was talking about, Chuck Billy, Chuck Schuldiner, John Tardy, even Jeff Walker for Carcass and stuff like that, they're not particularly guttural vocals. They're kind of higher pitched in nature to a degree, not so much Chuck or anything like that.
Right.
But, they're not super deep or guttural. And then when I heard that part of that Napalm Death song, at that moment, that's when the super guttural vocals made sense to me. And as soon as I crossed that line and the super low vocals made sense to me, then basically the wall came crashing down.
Yep.
And then it was on. Then it was like, okay, well, Napalm Death, and then it just, Cannibal Corpse wasn't one of the first bands I got into. I would say Cannibal Corpse might have been like the fifth, or sixth death metal band
right.
I ever got into, which I would feel like in our area might be backwards.
No, I did the same thing. I did the same thing.
Most people would probably. Oh yeah, I would think most people would probably, at least around here, get into them first because they either know someone who knows them or some shit like that. But like, yeah.
My first death metal band was Vader.
Cannibal Corpse stuff was when I was younger. Was that I couldn't really get into Barnes vocals, but once I had that wall broke down, then the old stuff with Barnes made more sense. Those really, really super low vocals on Two and the Mutilated, I grew to love those.
Right.
And then they kind of, the more I got into Cannibal Corpse, the more I fell in love with them. And that's when I realized, they're not, because you wonder, like, well, do people love them here? Because, like, for the same people, I would imagine some people might love the Goo Goo Dolls. Like, like they support them, because they're from Buffalo. And then after a while, I realized, people don't just support them because they're from Buffalo here. People support them because they're from Buffalo and because they're really, really fucking awesome.
They're fucking crazy good. Yeah. They were. They had their stronger eras, but
they were not my favorite death metal band at first. But ultimately, they became my favorite death metal band because to me, they embody. If someone wanted to say what's death metal, I would play them Hammer Smash Face.
Sure. Yep.
That's like the perfect, like that's everything I could possibly ever want in death metal. That song.
Yeah, it's the definition. Sure.
It's got breakdowns, it's got blast beats, it's got thrashier bits. It's got it all right there. So it's like, and then basically once you get past that, level of the bigger bands, you kind of, if you have the interest and you want to hear more, then you start peeling back layers of the onion. You get, your Incantation and Immolation, and stuff like that, and Malevolent Creation, and it's on and on. And I think that death metal in my opinion, for all the subgenres of metal, I think death metal has the most amount of quality bands at every single tier. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
Like if you listen to, like, there's your big bands and then there's a level beneath and so on and so forth. And I feel like in a lot of other genres, a lot of other metal subgenres,
there are more lacking bands, but not so much with death metal, right?
I feel like the quality, you could tell that as the tiers get lower and lower, that the quality decreases. And I feel like with death metal, at any tier, you could find an awesome band. That could be top tier musically, but not as far as, like, awareness or
awareness, right?
Or concert draw or anything like that. But I feel like death metal at any tier, you could find an awesome band, and that's really been my journey as a fan, constantly checking out death metal at different tiers. Just because there's excitement there. There's just, again, I don't know of any other subgenre that has that quality, abundance of quality at really any level. And because of that journey, because of that love, because of that excitement, a lot of the bands I had been in, except for, like, Herod or anything like that, they had an element of death metal to them. And then, around 2009, mid to late 2009, I decided, I have to do a death metal band.
There you go.
It's the love of that genre of music and the journey of just discovering all these bands going backwards was just so rewarding to me that there was just a time in my life where I could feel it in my hands. Like I had all these riffs in my hands that were just death metal riffs.
Yep.
I was like, I have to do a death metal band. So in late 2009, you know, Al Malkowitz, you know, ex of From This Day, you know, we formed Seplophile. And that, you know, out of all the bands I've been in, you know, I've said this before, it's the band that's closest to, like, you know, my vision of what the band was, you know, because I was a founding member. You know, except for Seplophile, you know, I've always kind of joined bands in progress. You know, bands that were already established.
Right, and adhered to somebody else's vision, right.
Which is cool. I mean, it's an honor that people are still asking me to be in bands, so I definitely don't mind that.
But Seplophile was your baby, yeah.
Seplophile was something I built from the ground up, and, you know, it's kind of like a more of a mission, like a mission statement for me. It's like, okay, well, you know, I kind of developed like a weird perception of myself, like where I was kind of bummed. I was like, well, dude, you join bands, and, you know, you've never really built one. You know, you've always kind of come into a band that has a sound, that has an identity, and you just make yourself fit in, which again is great. You know, that people want me to be in their band. I mean, that's fucking awesome. That's super cool. I'll never ever get tired of people asking me to jam with them or be in their band. That's a fucking huge honor. It's awesome. But it's a whole nother thing for me. It was like I needed to really build my own band, just to prove to myself that I could do it. You know, that I am capable of creating the house, not just moving in. You know.
Right, yeah. Yeah, you built one fuck of a house, sir.
What was that?
I said you built one fuck of a house, sir.
Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. You know, the band still means a lot to me. You know, it was, you know, and I'm glad that, you know, that they're still attempting to do stuff, and they have my total blessing. I love that band forever. You know, I named the band. You know, I kind of put the lineup together with, you know, the original lineup was great. We worked really, really hard at being really, really tight, you know, specifically me and Matt Backless, and Sean and Al, you know.
Yeah.
Colin kind of joined the band like 6 months in, but like those first 6 months, like you could feel it between the four of us that we
yeah, the chemistry, the magic, man.
Know,
yeah.
You know, you can just tell. Sometimes writing songs are tough, and other times it's just like turning a faucet on or off. You know, it's just there when you need it, and then when practice is over, you just shut it off. You leave, you come back the next time, turn it back on, and there's more riffs and there's more songs sitting right there for you. So it's like, you know, the band was a dream come true. You know, I guess the only thing I could really, really lament about it is that we didn't have that band, you know, 5 years earlier when we were all, you know, kind of young enough and unconnected to, you know, normal lives to you know,
yeah, less
really
adulthood, less responsibility, sure.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, by the time we had formed that band, I mean, we had all kind of already started inheriting, you know, either serious girlfriends or wives or houses or careers or children. You know, so it's like, you know, the timing was there creatively. It just wasn't there as far as, like, you know, pushing it as far as we could. I mean, we did some cool shit. I mean, we definitely played some cool shows with some awesome bands that were super influential. But, you know, it's just, the band was a dream come true. And it just, you know, it just kind of, you know, eventually it just kind of fell off me, I guess. You know, it's just like, okay, I felt like I accomplished everything that I could have ever accomplished, you know, with that band. And so if that's the case, then there's no reason to be there. You know, if you can't give your best shit to the band you're in, then you get the fuck out and find someone else who can.
Right.
And that band definitely, you know, has two awesome guitarists in that band right now, for sure. So
yeah.
You know, obviously once things get moving again with bands, and you know, I know that they've got stuff. They had stuff in the works as far as, I think, recordings, you know, until the whole COVID thing hit. But you know, I'm privy to some of the stuff that they've been working on, and it's, definitely going to be pretty intense and heavy and brutal and pretty technical too. So I think people are going to be in for a little bit of surprise when they hear it, just because they were the band, the two main writers of the band are no longer in the band, so it's going to be a little bit of a different sound.
Yeah,
it's going to be really cool.
The couple new songs that I have heard from them live, like at the last couple shows, were pretty technical. Like, at least a lot more technical than what I was accustomed to hearing on the debut. Like the style that I was used to hearing from you and Matt, which was present on the demo, and then the debut full length. I mean, that's one Seplophile, and this will be a whole new Seplophile, but yet the same.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, I agree. That's probably a good way of putting it. But yeah, my death metal journey continues.
Sure.
Just because I'm not playing death metal, active in playing death metal right now, the journey continues on. I still get stoked to hear new death metal bands, and I still get stoked for the old death metal bands that we all still know and love to this day. And the death metal journey, once it starts, it genuinely, I don't know anyone who started it that's ended it.
Yeah, it keeps chugging along, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's a facet and a branch of the underground that just has quality after quality after quality act at every level of awareness.
Yeah, there is just
unlike anything.
There is just a bottomless well of death metal bands, and not just in this country, like everywhere.
Yeah, there's very few death metal bands that I've heard where I can say, I shouldn't say that. Well, I try not to be a hater, but I could find something cool in probably any death metal band,
Right. Yeah.
because you gotta support it. You gotta keep it. You gotta keep encouraging the new bands, so then they could either improve or get the fuck out of the way for newer, better bands to come along.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. But you always have to support it.
Yeah.
Again, there's
keep it alive.
Death metal. I'm trying to think of death metal bands that I could say I hate, and there's ones I don't like, but I can't say there's ones that I hate.
Sure, because that's a strong word.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, death metal rules, and like it says in the Seplophile liner notes, death metal prevails.
Right. Yeah, I don't think that was all I had for you, and I don't think we're going to get a stronger ending than that.
Don't think so, yeah.
Death metal prevails. Okay, So next week we are doing black metal, grindcore, and hardcore in a single episode.
Yeah, I think it was important, because those genres were important to me on my journey, but not as so as like thrash or death metal or traditional heavy metal. They played parts, they played roles, but they were never all encompassing.
Sure.
Like those other genres were.
I'll split it up equally. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I have no doubt it'll be fun.
Alrighty. Well, you have a good night, sir, and thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have an excellent evening.
Alright. See you, man.